The room was tense, thick with the kind of silence that only exists when power refuses to listen. The president slouched in his seat, eyes glazed, fingers drumming the armrest like the sermon was background noise to a more pressing thought, himself. When he finally stood to leave, it wasn't subtle. He didn't bother to mask his disdain. Later, he'd call the service boring, a lazy critique from a man who'd rather tweet insults than engage with anything demanding empathy. But the real fury came later, simmering into a full boil as he replayed the moment Bishop Marin Budd dared to look him in the eye and demand mercy for the vulnerable. By morning, he'd weaponized his platform, branding her a nasty, radical left Trump hater to his followers, a mob already frothing for someone to blame.
What did you think of the service?
What did you think? Did you like it? Did you find it exciting? Not too exciting, was it? I didn't think it was a good service, no. Thank you very much.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
They could do much better.
Bud's crime? Asking a self-proclaimed God-fearing leader to consider the humanity of LGBTQ plus youth and undocumented families. These are not abstract people, she'd said, her voice steady but sharp enough to cut through the performative piety of the event. They are actual human beings. Her words weren't a plea for political correctness. They were a direct challenge to a man whose version of faith begins and ends with photo ops. When she invoked scripture, the call to mirror God's mercy in how we treat others, Trump's face twisted like he'd bitten into something sour. To him, mercy is weakness. To her, it's the bedrock of the gospel. The disconnect couldn't be starker. His retaliation was predictable. On Truth Social, he raged, painting Budd as some leftist zealot corrupting holy spaces with demonic messages. His base, ever rabid, followed suit. One Republican congressman even suggested deporting her, never mind that she's a U.S. citizen. But the spectacle didn't stop there. 21 House Republicans, allergic to any display of conscience, drafted a resolution condemning her partisan prayer. Since when is mercy partisan? Since Trumpism hijacked the lexicon of faith, reducing it to hollow slogans and weaponized grievance. Let's be clear, this isn't about theology, it's about control. Bud's message exposed the rot at the core of Trump's performative Christianity. A man who stumbles over basic Bible verses, who treats sacred texts like props, who's been found liable for sexual assault and defamation, has the gall to police a bishop's prayer? The hypocrisy reeks. His allies, those so-called Christian leaders who lick his boots, aren't fooling anyone. They've traded the gospel for power, moral clarity for a seat at the table of a man who wouldn't recognize Christ's teachings if they bit him. The backlash against Budd isn't just political, it's a violation of the First Amendment. Since when does the government get to dictate how a religious leader prays? The separation of church and state exists to protect faith from state interference, not to sanitize sermons for political convenience. Trump and his sycophants cross that line, punishing Budd for doing what pastors are meant to do. Speak truth to power. They want a tame gospel, one that blesses their cruelty and calls it righteousness. But Budd refused to shrink. She didn't preach a shallow, shriveled gospel of nationalism. She preached one that demands justice. And that's the rub. Trump's brand of Christianity can't survive actual scrutiny. It's a hollow mimicry, all flag-waving and faux patriotism, divorced from the radical love Jesus modeled. When his supporters fused the Constitution with the Bible at a recent rally, treating both as equally holy, they revealed their heresy. The gospel isn't a campaign tool. It doesn't bend to partisan agendas. It demands accountability, especially from those who claim to lead. Budd's defiance matters because it's a rallying cry. More clergy need to stop coddling tyrants and start calling out moral bankruptcy. This isn't about politics. It's about salvaging the soul of a faith community corrupted by idolatry. Trump's America is one where children weep over deported parents, where queer kids hide in fear, where mercy is mocked as weakness. If that's boring to him, good. Let him yawn through the reckoning. True faith doesn't need his approval. It needs courage, the kind Budd showed when she stood in that room, looked him in the eye, and refused to let mercy die quietly.